Welcome to the Book Faire podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have an interview with Samuel Joseph and Phil Proctor, authors of the Magic Maze Trilogy. We also have a look at some notable new releases and library news. Let's get things started with an interview with Phil Proctor and Samuel Joseph. Hello, Phil and Sam. How are you two doing today?
Well, that's not for me to say. I can only speak for myself. And I'm back from a wonderful Reps radio conference up in Bellevue, Washington, where I got to recreate old radio shows from the 40s and 50s with wonderful stars like Margaret O'Brien and child stars like various young child stars who actually did shows, Tommy Cooper, lots of wonderful people. So I'm all jazzed up and happy to be back in LA.
That sounds wonderful. And Samuel?
Yeah, and I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. Just so you know, Phil is very kind of famous in voiceover circles.
What do you mean kind of famous? I'm a legend. Or at least some of my voices are legends. I'm Howard on the Rugrats. That's the one that people mostly know.
Right. He's Howard on Rugrats. He's the drunken monkey in which one?
The Dr. Dolittle series. I am a social drinker.
Right. And so he's part of a famous comedy group called the Firesign Theater that is catalog is in the Library of Congress. And I have a background writing all sorts of things. Phil was in a play and a movie I wrote, and we've written plays together. And I also used to write animation for a living, like shows like Batman and DuckTales and Beast Wars and Dennis the Menace. So we have a long background. We decided to write some children's books, and I'm also an educator. So I used to teach in the public schools, and now I teach college English. And we came up with this idea of Tyler and Tess, these 11-year-old fraternal twins who get sucked up in a Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland kind of world. And we decided, well, let's not just make it an adventure, let's make it educational. So we have had classes teach the book, and the teachers can use, every chapter has some sort of teaching lesson. It's not always the same, but for instance, at one point, the twins get sucked up into the fractured forest, and then they realize that every kind of tree imaginable is there, and they realize they're all grouped in prime numbers, and they count down to 1, and they're able to get out to the main tree.
And then, the way that we designed the book is the twins have to solve puzzles in order to move on to the next adventure and hopefully finally get home.
So there's all sorts of villains and lots of silliness, lots of fun, but it's really about how they have to bond together, even though they're, as you know, living at home, they were always bickering, how they had to bond together to survive and figure out how to get from one part of the maze to the next in order to eventually get home. So that's why, and so like on our website, magicmaze.com, MAGICMAZE.
But you can't even spell it. Boy, you better go back to school, Professor.
Wait a second. MAGICMAZE.com. That is correct, sir. And there you can see there's a chapters there's study guides for this teacher.
And can you tell us a little bit about these main characters, Tyler and Tess?
Tyler is like always making a joke, and Tess is very serious and has a difficult time making jokes.
Yeah, Tyler's very athletic. You know, he's the boy.
Tess is athletic too, because she's like the star. They're both stars on the soccer team, the same size.
You know, that's true. That's right. They're both very athletic, and they both have, you know, their own personality quirks. And like twins, they bicker and tease one another on a regular basis. But they definitely have to work together in order to move on and escape the dangers that they find themselves in. So they learn teamwork.
And every chapter is its own, like, almost little short story.
Yes.
And so each one is a standalone, almost adventure. If you knew the characters, you could almost put the story. Well, there is a logical flow to but every chapter is something where a teacher could discuss it, or the kids can think about it and move on. So, and I also think at some point, if we got lucky with this, it could do very well with game. There could be a Magic Maze game, Magic Maze videos, where people would have to solve different puzzles to get through the maze online.
And when it comes to Tyler and Tess, is there any personal history that you draw inspiration from in writing these characters?
Well, it really came out of Sam's tortured brain, so I have to ask
Well, I
him.
used to bicker a lot with my sister, whom I'm very close to now. But yes, I suppose there was some.
And I'm an only child, so I had to just fight with myself, which I still do.
So, Phil, it sounds like you have more experience on the performance side. What was your background in writing before coming to the Magic Maze trilogy?
Well, I was the editor of my school paper, Riverdale Country School, and I also wrote for the Alan Stevenson school paper. I always loved writing, and I always loved comic writing. So even as a kid, that was what I would do. And then when I became a member of the four-man satirical comedy group, the Firesign Theater, back in the 60s, we wrote very complicated scripts. We invented the long form long form record stories, surrealistic 29-minute stories for each side of an album in the days when we had sides to our album. And then we put together a bunch of books. So I've been writing books with the Firesign Theater for 50 years. And writing is an integral part of voice work because it all starts with the script. Everything starts with the script. I've sung on Broadway, and it was an off-Broadway show that brought me to Los Angeles. And in every instance, it was creating a character out of the character that the author gave to you. So I've had plenty of experience doing that, and that just made it easier for me to write character driven comedy.
So, Phil, it sounds like you were more bringing comedy to the story. Is that true?
I would say so, wouldn't you, Sam? That I would always look for the humor in a situation, while Sam is very, very good at creating uh, uh, tense situations and challenges for the kids. We had a really good collaboration.
Yeah, and we've written other things together. We've written some other plays. We wrote one play called "God Help Us," a satirical piece. You remember? You know who Ed Asner was, Anthony?
Of course.
Yeah. So Ed Asner did the play around the country. He played God, and he's angry about what's going on politically, and we would hire local actors to play a liberal and conservative, and we did very well with it. In fact, it was booked all of 2020, but then COVID happened. But we did very well with that play together, and we would update it all the time to keep it current. And then there was actually
I was in job, let me tell you.
that was the last thing. I also co-wrote Ed Asner's autobiography.
So you have a lot of experience with collaborating, not just with other authors. Of course, writing for television. Correct, Sam?
Yes, though I tend to I write some with people. I tend to mostly write alone. But Phil is the person I've collaborated most with on scripts. This book being a giant project.
It's not an easy time to find the funny. Okay. And I just heard today that Jimmy Kimmel has been reinstated on his show. So, the atmosphere is tense and tricky. So, but we're still trying to think of something that we might be able to write that would be pertinent for the times and help people get their footing in this difficult period. Right, Sam?
Yeah, I agree.
So, Sam, you had said that the Magic Maze was a large undertaking. Do you consider it to be something that was more difficult than other projects you've written?
For me, in fact, I brought Phil in on it. I knew Phil casually for years, and then in 2006, I had a play, completely different kind of piece, a stage play produced in Los Angeles. And I called Phil up. I said, "Would you be interested in being in the play?" And he said, "Well, let me read it." And he loved it. I was and he was great. And I said, well, we're working. I said, I'm working on this children's book. Do you want to write it with me? Because sometimes I feel like there's a project I want to work with somebody on, and sometimes it's a project I say, no, this is something I need to write by myself. And I felt intuitively that this is something. Plus, I love working with Phil. Phil is a genius. Right? He really is. I mean, guy speaks 7 languages fluently. Within comedy circles, he is revered by particularly the old timers, the people who know from the past. And I feel very blessed to work with him. And so I asked him to join when we did this. So also, I tend to not write. I think I'm a good prose writer. I started another novel I've been working on and off. But I'm not my skill set is more towards screenplays and stage plays. I think I'm quite good with dialogue, and
Yes, you are.
and that's really my forte. So writing prose, even I a lot of times I read a novel, and it's tough to get through if it's too wordy.
Sam, can you talk a little bit about how you've used your background in education in writing the Magic Maze trilogy?
Well, when we came up with the idea of doing the 12 parts to get out of the maze. And I said, well, let's make it educational and let's figure out how we can do it. So when we were outlining basically what we did is we assigned each other chapters to write, and then we would go back and edit each other's chapters together and sort of try to create a more singular style to the writing. And so when we thought about, okay, what's a clever way to do this? Well, I think Phil had this whole idea about a pirate treasure and how to figure out the riddle for the pirate treasure. And I thought about, I think, the fracture forest. And then because I teach English, I said, well, let's have them do a contest where they have to win this talent contest by being the worst talent, but it's actually funny. And they come up with a homonym rap rhyme. So I went to the store to buy 2 apples, or went. In other words, everything is a homonym in the rap, and then so teachers could actually say, "Oh, you guys come up with a homonym rap rhyme," and so some are English lessons, some are math lessons, some are a story. Well, how would you deal with this situation, and emotionally or that kind of thing. So that's. There's so much that they can do.
That's the trilogy all in one binding?
Yeah, we did 3 books, and the reason we did it originally was a 4th grade teacher who I'm very close to still, who's in her 80s now, loved the books, had the school in Morris County teach it for a while. She was on the school board, and she said, it's too long so we turned it into a trilogy so the kids, they'll like it if they can get through one part and then another and another. So if somebody wants to read the whole thing, fine. And it's a little more expensive to buy the 3 books separately, but for a classroom use, it might be, okay, you got through book 1, now you got to go to book 2. And then you get to go to book 3. And that's why we did it.
Kind of each book creates an excitement and interest.
Yeah.
So they want to continue with the adventures, see what happens next.
So did you write it as a single volume and then have to edit it down, or was it kind of split up after the fact?
We did do that, yeah. We originally
it came together as a single adventure,
right?
Broken into various.
Each book has its own sort of ending to itself. But if you want to keep on going, this is what happens next.
That's right. That's right. To see if they achieve their goal of getting back home.
And of course, talking about this wonderful world of the Magic Maze, what are some notable characters inside of the maze that you guys would like to talk about?
Well, there's this tiny short person called Belkin, who's head of the Trigits, and he's got a mohawk hairdo, and he's very feisty, but he hates the woman who wants to rule the Magic Maze in its entirety, called Queen Zebra. And she's you can see her in the 3rd book. You want to raise the book up there, Phil?
But this one,
you see to the right is Queen Zebra, And to the left is Simon, the wizard, and he's evil. And then the two kids are running. So there's a whole bunch of sinister people, and then there's a lot of small characters who pop in and out of the story.
What Sam is really pointing out is that there's an overall story of an autocratic, crazy queen who wants to control life in the magic maze, and she has her cohorts. And there are the Trigits are basically rebels, a group of rebels who are trying to, prevent her from taking over the country, if you will. And so that's one of the major plots. And the kids are confronted by her and her minions, and they have to figure out how to overcome her as well, like I'm trying to overcome my cat here.
So what is it about the queen that makes her sinister, that makes her an autocrat in this story?
She tries to suppress people who won't bow down to her rule. And she has these bad guys who are led by a guy named Fulwelaban, and they're two-headed creatures. They have heads on both sides, and they're always arguing with themselves.
Yeah, she basically. I mean, does it sound familiar? Somebody trying to take over the country.
Absolutely.
Sound familiar?
It does, and I'm totally fine with talking about what some of these parallels are, because it's difficult to write anything, to have any kind of art, any kind of storytelling that isn't inherently political or in some way referencing the real world. So if you two are okay with delving into some of the inspirations for Queen Zebra and for the more sinister aspects of the Magic Maze, feel free.
Well, I'll tell you, Sam and I wrote a book called What to Say to Your Crazy Right-Wing Uncle after we wrote our political play, Heaven Help Us, which is basically a plea to people to get together and listen to one another, okay, instead of fighting all the time. So it's been a prevalent theme. And Sam's play, I don't think he even mentioned the name of it, Window of Opportunity, which he then directed as a film, was also dealing with the theme of powerful people trying to take over aspects of our society and the business and the world. So
that play is really about Enron. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that scandal, but it's basically corporate corruption on a wide scale. I think Phil and I are both, as we like to say, children of the 60s, so to speak. We grew up during the era of the Vietnam War and
social protests.
And I think we both always have noted how if you're funny and you're an artist, you want a world that's free to express satire and irony. And so we're obviously pretty liberal. But I don't think that the only liberal aspect to the children's books is really they want to fight against authoritarianism. But I think everybody really wants to be against authoritarianism. Not everybody. There's a whole group of people who don't. But even a lot of the people who you might think are right wing really don't want authoritarianism.
Yeah, because, basically children, and I include myself in that, are always aware of parental authority and scholastic authority. When we're kids, we're constantly being taught by older people, and hopefully they're going to teach us the right values, and they're going to bring out the best in us. And Tyler and Tess loved their parents, and they loved the home that they come from, and the characters that they have to confront are really like not the way they expect grown-ups to behave, if you catch my drift.
Phil, Sam, you two bring up some amazing points about fighting corrupt power, abusive power. Can you two speak to how the main characters of these books are twins that are children? Can you two speak a little bit about how children often are aware, but they are usually the most helpless in situations like this, where they have the least agency? What is it like writing a story that allows these people who are smarter than most people give them credit for, more aware? What's it like giving them the power to affect change?
I think that's the most exciting part of the story.
Yeah.
Don't you, Sam? Their development, feeling their powers, learning that they're smart and they can use their smarts to get out of dangerous situations.
And helping
You know,
each other and relying on each other in a way that they wouldn't have in a normal situation. And so there's so much love there that they come to realize and how much they really care for each other. So, but this is not a polemic, it's an adventure story. This is a story and it's a fantasy and it's fun. And I want every time somebody to read the chapter to be impressed and engaged by what I hope they'll see is the cleverness of the story. And I mean, when we did some Zoom calls with a class in New Jersey, the students were saying, I couldn't put this down and I never liked to read. And so I know it works. Phil and I know it works. We just hope to get other people to start. I think once some schools start teaching it with their classes or some groups of people, a lot of people will be, because they're going to talk about it. So this is part of the reason we're doing this now. We're both no spring chickens, but we're also pros. We know what we're doing, how to write, how to engage readers, and how to tell stories, and how to do it in a fun and in a clever way. And I so I think a lot of people say, well, I mean, because there is truth in living life and seeing a lot and having some wisdom, which I like to think as both an educator and as a writer I have, and Phil as I will say, a comedy genius, which he is. So I think people.
don't make me laugh.
I think people who will read the books will enjoy them immensely. I think in terms of librarians and educators, the kids will tell each other.
But the point is, we never stop learning.
Right. That's right.
And particularly in the profession that Sam and I were called to follow on this planet, this time, we are young at heart, and we're constantly inspiring ourselves to go places we haven't gone before and have adventures we haven't had before. And that's very childlike. So we can identify strongly with our characters based on our remembrance of being kids and what we learned from it, and might be able to share with other kids growing up. That's the way I look at it.
I mean, I want to keep on learning till the day I die.
And now, to give you to the last words, I give this question to all guests on the podcast. So feel free to use this as an opportunity to get any final thoughts in, as well as to really hone in on what you want people to see when they look at your work. This is a more open-ended, introspective question. So Phil, Sam, and of course, one at a time, please. How do you see yourself and the work that you do as a writer?
Before I answer the question, I just want to say to your people who might be interested in the book, you can contact us through the website, magicmaze, MAZE.com. And we would be happy to, if you particularly want to buy the books for your class, participate in talking to the class via Zoom.
Absolutely.
And talking to you about, I'd be happy to talk to the teachers personally and give thoughts about educate plans, lesson plans. So what do I want to do as a writer? My God, I want to see more of the projects I've created produced. I want to see these books get much more a wide audience, and I just want to keep on creating interesting, hopefully important and provocative and fun stories.
And by the way, there's a company in Australia, Down Under, which is looking at the project with the potential of making it into a kids' television program, okay? Which would be both the adventures and a quiz show for the kids to see if they've learned something from the episode that they just watched. So there's great potential to reach a lot of kids and excite them with this story.
And Phil, again, the final question: how do you see yourself and the work that you do as a writer?
Well, I wrote this book called Where's My Fortune Cookie, which tells, and is profusely illustrated, which tells the story of my crazy life. And in many ways, it's a parallel with the Magic Maze, because in my life, and maybe a lot of other people out there and kids, you are going through adventures and you have to make decisions that will influence what you do in life, how you progress in life, and your relationship with others. That's the story. And this is a way, I think, of making kids aware of their power and the fact that they can be in control of their development and their destiny and lead fulfilling and intelligent and helpful lives with their future adventures.
Thank you. That was an interview with Samuel Joseph and Phil Proctor. Their series, Tyler and Tess in the Magic Maze, is available now as 3 separate titles or one collection of the trilogy in a single binding. You can learn more about the Magic Maze trilogy as well as find resources for educators at magicmaze.com. Next, we'll be looking at some notable releases, but first, if you appreciate the work being done with the Book Faire podcast, there are a few ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky at Book Faire Pod or go to patreon.com/thebookfair. There you can find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Lastly, the best way to support the Book Faire podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Next, we'll be looking at some notable releases out this week, starting with Busted by Dan Gemeinhart. An unlikely trio embark on the adventure of a lifetime in this laugh-out-loud romp by Geminhart. 12-year-old Oscar has lived with his grandfather at the Sunny Days retirement community since Oscar's parents' death when he was an infant. When the community's new owner raises rent prices, Oscar and his grandfather must find a way to make more money or risk becoming unhoused. Then, foul-mouthed retiree Jimmy offers Oscar a deal. If the youth helps him to complete his bucket list, he'll give Oscar the money he needs. Accompanied by Natasha, the 12-year-old daughter of Sunny Day's new manager, typically responsible Oscar resolves to break the rules just this once and agrees, only to discover that Jimmy's unfinished business involves causing all manner of trouble, including dining and dashing and participating in an underground poker game with convicted criminals. Geminhart's multi-layered rendering of the mostly white cute characters' clashing dynamics, particularly between Oscar, Jimmy, and Natasha, adds multi-layered emotional depth into simultaneously heartfelt, sentimental, and chaotic plotting. Altogether, it is a joyful tale that suggests it can be okay to bend the rules in pursuit of growth and change. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next up, Finding Lost by Holly Goldberg Sloan. 2 years and 4 months before the start of this quiet novel by Sloan, middle schooler Cordy's life is irrevocably altered when her father, a commercial crab fisherman, drowns while working. Now unable to afford their cozy rental home in a small coastal Oregon town, Cordy, her younger brother Gino, and their mother move into a boathouse belonging to the wealthy family for whom Cordy's mother manages property. Simultaneously, Mom waits tables at a local seafood restaurant while forming an escape plan to a better life. An idea that gives Cordy, who can't imagine leaving the only home she's ever known, a stomach ache. The family's adoption of a lovable stray dog with extremely bad breath, whom they name Lost, sets in motion gradual changes that result in emotional conflict for reflective, conscientious Cordy. Her father called her Daughter of the Sea, a title she questions until an awe-inspiring sight of a dolphin with albinism ignites within her a profound curiosity. Cordy's unrealized passion for the ocean, as well as her open-minded ponderings about life, add depth to this leisurely paced narrative, while perceptive, kind-hearted adult characters ground this story in a sense of community. The protagonists read as white, and this book is recommended for ages 9 and up. Next is The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson. A black college freshman and her roommates find themselves caught in the web of a charismatic but dangerous older man in this nail-biting thriller by Jackson. After spending her childhood attending primarily white private schools, Jordan is excited to find a sense of belonging at Fraser University, a historically black college where she makes fast friends with her suite mates Lauren, Cammie, and Vanessa. Then, shortly into the school year, Vanessa's brother Devonte, in his 30s and recently released from prison, comes to visit for a few days. At first, his presence is welcome. He cooks for the girls and gives them advice, but soon his manipulation of the teens and their actions begins to spiral out of control. It's up to Jordan, with help from her crush, a white fraternity member named Nick, to break Devonte's hold on her and her friends. Jackson's signature and chilling prose presents action-filled and fast-paced plotting rife with tension as Jordan attempts to puzzle out the mystery behind Devonte's endgame while navigating issues of personal identity. Jordan and Nick's budding romance and the obstacles it unearths as it unfolds amid the HBCU setting and the overarching conflict adds a layer of complexity to this satisfying offering. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. And the final title for this week is War Games by Alan Gratz. In a smartly plotted page-turner by Gratz, young athletes competing in the 1936 Berlin Olympics literally go for the gold upon becoming embroiled in a plot to rob the German National Bank. Oklahoma gymnast Evie dreams of winning Olympic gold and pulling her family out of financial precarity. When she falls short of passing a qualifying round, she's approached by unscrupulous, apparently British journalist Solomon, who proposes that Evie, alongside German weightlifter Karl and French diver Ursula, help him steal Nazi gold. Though their athletic capabilities seemingly guarantee they can overcome the Reichsbank's security measures, the trio must first locate a secret tunnel beneath the Olympic Stadium to facilitate the break-in, a task made harder by the watchful presence of Evie's designated youth services host, Heinz, whom she believes is a Hitler Youth spy. Well-researched historical facts add teeth to this cinematic novel's shocking twists and turns. Layered depictions of Nazi discrimination against Jewish, Black, and queer individuals, and how it impacts the storylines of Karl, who is gay, and biracial Ursula, who is Black and white, are a standout feature of this riveting adventure. An author's note contextualizes included figures and events, and this book is recommended for ages 9 to 12. Finishing this week's episode with some headlines, starting with an update from the Alabama Public Library Service. The APLS is currently withholding state funding from the Fairhope Public Library, which was initially reported on the Book Faire podcast on May 1st, 2025. The dispute stems from disagreements on how to handle challenges to library materials. Fairhope Library had originally reviewed 2 titles that were challenged by members of the community and determined they did not meet the standards for removal from the teen section of the library. This is what initially led to the state freezing funds to the library. Board members for the Alabama Public Library Service on the state level voted to review some of the titles and decide for themselves if they meet the definition of sexually explicit materials, standing in disagreement with the decision reached by the Fairhope Library. A board member for the Fairhope Library stated publicly that they believe the library branch is in compliance with the administrative code set by the state board, and that the definition of sexually explicit is, quote, a subjective thing. You can't define it with words. It is emotional as well as objective, end quote. The local community rallied in support, organizing fundraising to help offset the withheld funds from the state. The Alabama Public Library Service is currently allowing public comments until October 14th. The code change would define any material that promotes, encourages, or positively depicts transgender procedures, gender ideology, or the concept of more than 2 biological genders as inappropriate for children. Next, a Kentucky judge has declined to appoint members to the Daviess County Public Library Board of Trustees. Judge Executive Charlie Castlin has declined to advance nominees to the Daviess County Library Board that have been submitted by the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives, making this the second round of nominees to be rejected by the judge. The KDLA's nominees were local historian Aloma Dew and Brescia University Director of Institutional Research and Effectiveness, Sagan Storm. After reviewing the nominees, Castlin instead nominated local attorney Tim Klein for board president, whom he had spoken to ahead of time about serving on the board. On top of being an attorney, Klein is also a pastor, which Castlin claims was not a factor in his decision. The judge prioritized active members of the community, which does not align with his decision to reject the KDLA's suggested appointees. While Klein's application mentions the First Amendment and embracing equal library access to all, there is a sense of reservation in hearing that a pastor is being considered for the director of a library board. This comes at a time when book bans in conservative states are continuing to rise, and most of which are being challenged on the grounds of religious views. One last short headline to finish the episode. A student-led organization is stepping up against book bans in South Carolina. For this Banned Books Week, it's best to highlight the most important voices in the discourse, the children who are directly affected by censorship. This story comes out of Charleston County, South Carolina. The Diversity Awareness Youth Literacy Organization, or DALO, chapter at a Charleston County high school was started in 2023 with just 3 members. Today, the chapter has grown to more than 50 students at Academic Magnet High School, making it the largest DALO chapter in South Carolina. DALO first formed in Beaufort, South Carolina in 2021, and the state now has 10 total chapters. It is a student-led organization whose mission includes anti-censorship advocacy. DALO functions mainly as a book club, with students typically discussing 3 to 4 diverse books a year as a group. However, their outreach includes much more, such as promoting literacy, volunteering to read to toddlers, or advocating to keep books on school shelves. The Academic Magnet High School chapter was formed by current senior Kate Silvatelli in 2023. She was quoted saying, quote, "It's not like you have to be out there fighting banned books. We're going to make friends. We're going to meet up once a week, and anyone can join, even if you don't agree with all our political stuff." End quote. DALO is currently only operating in South Carolina, and the organization was featured in the documentary Band Together. The work being done by DALO in supporting the freedom to read and charitable work within their community is absolutely incredible. This will conclude another episode of the Book Faire podcast. Please check out the short episodes I've done in honor of Banned Books Week on this page, as well as go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find links to news sources throughout the show. I would greatly recommend checking out the article from the Clinton Chronicle about DALO and their work. It is extremely thorough, talking about their history and the work they do in the community. Otherwise, please remember, if you like what you hear, share the Book Faire podcast with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.